Welcome to the Strokecast. A Generation X stroke survivor explores rehab, recovery, the frontiers of neuroscience, and how to peel a banana with one hand.
Hello, I'm Bill Monroe, and welcome to episode 29 of the Strokecast. This week, I'm joined by special guest Richard Kaufman. Richard's had quite a life. He's a recovering addict. He spent time homeless. He's been in the military. He was wounded in Iraq, and that's when he suffered an ocular stroke that left him partially blind. An ocular stroke is similar to a brain stroke, but it takes place in the eye. Basically, a clot forms in the blood vessels that feed the retina or the optic nerve that connects the eye to the visual cortex in the brain. So, same story. Clots form, blood vessels get blocked, cells die, and vision loss results. Like the strokes we are all too familiar with, it's an issue of something going wrong with the circulatory system. Fortunately, or unfortunately, I suppose, depending on your perspective, the risk factors for an ocular stroke are very similar to those for a cerebral or brain stroke. Arterial sclerosis, basically too much gunk in the arteries, high blood pressure, a previous stroke or heart attack, heart disease, diabetes, the usual suspects. For an ocular stroke, of course, glaucoma also joins the list. So for the most part, if you're already taking steps to reduce your risk of a brain stroke, you're also reducing your risk of an eye stroke, and probably a whole bunch of other things as well. In this chat, Richard talks candidly about the challenges he's faced in his life, the value of maintaining a retail career while serving in the Army, dealing with depression, and his experience with care through the U.S. Veterans Administration healthcare system. You can reach Richard by searching for his hashtag, and that is hashtag SupplementGuyNJ. Today, a major focus of his efforts is to help folks recover from addiction and to help them change their lives for the better. He hosts a podcast called Recovery and Redemption to explore these issues in greater detail. So, let's meet Richard Kaufman. Richard, thank you so much for joining us on Strokecast this week.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm not used to being up this early in the morning, so thank you.
I'm not really sure if I'm up this early in the morning or if I'm up this late at night right now. So,
okay. Where are you located?
I am in Seattle.
Okay, very nice.
So,
I'm in New Jersey, so It's 6 o'clock now.
Okay, yep, it's about 3 a.m. out here.
Wow. Don't you sleep?
More than I used to, more than I did pre-stroke. But, what I find myself doing these days is often just because there's so much other stuff out there that I want to do. And especially now that, all of this recovery sort of lights a fire under you. But I end up just trying to work around my schedule. So I often sleep, 4 hours at night and then another 4-hour nap in the afternoon.
Okay. So you got to figure it out.
Exactly. And that's one of the other things about the stroke is that, neurofatigue will really tell you when it's time to go ahead and go to sleep now.
Yeah, definitely.
So as a stroke survivor of 6 years now, let's start with, what was your life like before the stroke? What happened with my stroke, it all happened, I was on active duty in the military, and it all had to do with my helmet, a Humvee, and the pavement. Oh.
That's all I'm going to say. So I got hurt, and they found out that I had PTSD, TBI, and for some reason I had an ocular stroke. And it said if it would have went to my brain, it could have been a lot worse. But I had the ocular stroke, and that took my sight in my left eye.
Wow!
So now I'm totally blind in my left eye.
So what exactly is an ocular stroke?
I have no clue. I wish the doctors would tell me more, but you know how the VA is. So I guess they said it had an embolism that normally it usually either hits the brain or it hits, one of the other body organs, but it hit my eye instead. So it was like an explosion in my eye instead of in my brain. So it took my eyesight in my left eye.
Gotcha.
And so it's been 6 years now. I loved being in the military. I was in the military for 17 or 18 years before that. I was always outgoing, having fun. I was always the guy that would, if you needed your morale boosted, I was that guy. It was always fun. Let's have fun. Let's, make everybody feel good around me. And then things changed after I got hurt. And before I got hurt, I was a voracious reader. So I read a lot, probably almost 5,000 to 6,000 books before that time.
Wow.
And then after that happened, it's kind of like everything kind of changed as far as my demeanor. Like you said, when you have a stroke, everything changes. It's like, all right, now I can't see anything out of my left eye. It's kind of like now everything you look at, you're only seeing half of everything. So that kind of, after that, I kind of got in a really, really deep depression. But after working through it, I went through counseling, of course. Then I went to go talk to people that were totally blind, and it kind of changed my perspective on that. I was like, okay, now I can only see out of this in one eye, but this guy can't see at all. It's kind of like the old adage, the guy can't complain about his shoes to the guy that has no feet.
Exactly.
So things are starting to go a lot better. And I got out of my depression. And what I did is I actually started helping. So whenever I get into that depression, I just try to help more people. And it kind of gets me out of my, because I see some people that are deformed on, half of their body. They have the slurred speech. And I'm also in the physical fitness arena. I'm a personal trainer and also a nutritionist. So it kind of helps out a lot that I know a little bit about stuff like that I can actually help people with also.
Right, because all of that stuff, it's amazing how all of that stuff comes together. And, that's one of those themes I hear again and again from people who have come through depression, is that often one of the things they find most helpful in dealing with it is obviously the counseling is very important, and for many folks the medications are true lifesavers. But one of the things we don't hear as much about that makes a difference for a lot of folks is going out and helping someone else.
Yeah, I think a lot has to do with your mindset. I think coming back from any kind of injury, or like I have a guy at work, his wife is going through stage 4 cancer, but she's walking 10 miles a day, even though she's going through chemo. And the doctor says, well, if she wasn't doing that before she got sick, that she wouldn't have survived it. And even though she's going through the chemo, she's still pushing herself to keep doing what she used to do, trying to keep in that positive mindset. I think if you had a stroke, I think if it's your mind, your mindset determines a lot of how your recovery goes.
Right. One of the things that I've been saying is that, there are many reasons why you might not be able to do something. But if you say and you decide, I can't do this, or I'm not going to get better, that You're guarantees right. that you won't get better. That's
true. I have always been involved, like you said, in the fitness arena. And Arnold Schwarzenegger, people would always say, Arnold, I'll never look like you. And he says, you're right, because you think you won't. So if you think you can't do something, guess what? You can't. You're automatically putting up that mind block to where, okay, I'm self-dooming myself. So, and like I started dealing with people I started reading books about people that were blind, just trying to get into their mindset. And a lot of times, like Helen Keller said, She said the only thing worse than not being able to see is a person that has vision but has no vision for their life.
So as you were going through this recovery, I personally have not served in the military, and so everything I know really comes second and third hand. But in dealing with depression, how was that received in the in your time in the military and in through the services provided by the VA?
Well, it was a double-edged sword because I got hurt, and then they kept me in for like a year and a half. I had to go to a place where for everybody that's being medically discharged, they had to go to fulfill their contract. So I would sit there. They'd send you to a certain place, and you would sit there for the weekend and then come back home. So until you filled your contract. And then they eventually medically discharged me because I guess they figure if you can't shoot, you're pretty much worthless to the military. So not only did I lose my eyesight, I also lost my career.
Right.
And that's what pretty much just, because my whole makeup was just my career. That was my identity. Like if somebody ever asked me for my ID, it was always my military ID. I'd never even thought about showing them my driver's license. It was just like, all right, well, this is, I'm a soldier. And then once that was taken away from me, that's when it kind of got real hairy with depression. But the VA, I got to say, in New Jersey, treated me really, really well. They hooked me up with a psychologist, and my wife still laughs to this day because the doctor that they gave me, her name was Dr. Seuss. So my wife's like, that's pretty fitting for you that your shrink is Dr. Seuss. But she was really, really good. And she talked to me probably for the first 6 months before she even talked about putting me on any kind of medication or anything like that. So I've got to say that the VA has been really, really good to me. I don't have any complaints.
Well, that is fantastic. It's a shame they have that care needs to be provided, but it's awesome that they are providing that high quality care. Yeah.
And, she always says, well, I still go back once a month, but she says, if you need to come back once a week, we're here for you. So like I said, they've been really, really good for me. And then it was just trying to change my mindset after the depression. It's like, all right, I got to get on. I got to start doing something about this. I'm like, I can't just be, gaining the weight because I'm not working out. I'm not going to the gym. I'm not doing any cardio. I'm like, so now I'm working in a health food store and I'm not being healthy. So then I just started getting back on my own horse. Now, most people don't even know that I'm blind until they look in my eye, and one pupil is like dilated and the other one is not. And they're like, "What the hell happened to you?" And then I tell them the story, But I don't use it as a disability. I consider it disability, not disability. It's a blessing because God gave me another outlook on life about how precious life is, and we don't own anything in this world. God just lets us play with it for a while. And, once you come back from something like that, life or death, it's kind of like, everything else is just gravy, We're all living on borrowed time.
Right. Many folks just don't realize it until it really hits them in the face.
I tell everybody, like my partner where I work, he plays guitar like I do. And he's got like 16 guitars, and he used to just keep them all pretty and nice and hang them up on a wall and not play. And I'm like, dude, you're only getting one chance at this life. If you don't want to get the most out of this life, you're not guaranteed tomorrow. And I always tell everybody, there is no tomorrow. It's only today. So it gives you a different perspective. But like as far as caregivers go, like with my wife, I guess it's been so long she doesn't even think about it. That I can't see. So sometimes she'd be like waving at me from my left side and I can't see. She's like, don't you see me? And I'm like, no, actually I don't. And then she remembers, oh yeah, I forget. And my kids know, that they kind of, my boys, I got teenagers, they understand, but now they joke about it because I make light of the situation.
Sure. You don't laugh
like my son, my 13-year-old son, he has Asperger's.
Okay.
So I pick on him about his Asperger's, and he picks on me about being Cyclops, only having one eye. But it's kind of like if you have that levity about the situation, it makes people more comfortable, around you. But I mean, it can be weird sometimes. Like if we go out somewhere and somebody goes to shake your hand and I can't see them, and my wife has to say, he didn't mean to be disrespectful. He just can't see you from that side. And then people are like, oh, because you can't see the wounds. Like you were saying, a lot of times if it's not visible, people don't even know about it. But I don't look at it as a disability at all. I just double down on everything else that I'm good at. And what I did is I figured, okay, if I lost my vision in the one eye, what happens if I go totally blind? So I just started picking up playing the guitar. So, just in case anything ever did happen, I would actually have a hobby and be able to do stuff. You're trying to be proactive,
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's living for today and planning for tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. A couple of weeks ago, I actually just talked with a guitarist in Spain. He was a professional musician before his stroke. And in his stroke, he lost use of the right side of his body.
Okay.
So a large part of his recovery was then just figuring out, okay, now how do I ever play guitar again? And he managed to do it and make some changes and some adaptations to be able to finally start to physically do that again.
Mm-hmm.
Because music becomes such a powerful thing.
Yeah, man, especially for guitar player, because that's your picking hand.
Right. Exactly.
So he probably but it also probably gave him a goal to get back to.
Absolutely.
That's how you feed your family. That's your career.
Absolutely.
I can understand that, how that can push him.
So talking about career, how did you choose your current career path after leaving the military and really having to think about the idea of a civilian career for the first time in nearly 20 years?
Well, actually, anytime I was in the military, I always had a job either at the local GNC or at the like a vitamin shop or a health food store. So I've been in and out of like GNC for about 30 years. So this is, something that was always my passion. It was always something when I was young, I would read the old bodybuilder magazines with Arnold and just soak up all the information. Mm-hmm. So when I got out, even when I got hurt in the military, that's what I was still working at a GNC. So just something that I stayed with over the last 30 years. And then, if my other podcasts that I deal with, like I said, I deal with addiction issues, and I help people with addiction-related issues. And I was also a homeless drug addict at one time. So that all of a sudden I did one of my friend's podcasts, and he's like, "Damn, dude, you got a story. You got a real story to help people with. People, once they find out, you've been drug addicted, you only have a 9th grade education, you've been homeless, but now, you had your stroke, but you're still coming out the other side and you're more powerful, positive now than I was before then." So that's when I really started doubling down on the podcast, because a lot of times you could, if you go to a meeting in a room with some, like AA meeting, you can only help maybe 12 people. But, if you go on a podcast, you can probably help hundreds of people, and people you don't even know can be inspired by your message. So that's why I'm starting to double and triple down on helping people, through doing podcasts like yours and stuff like that.
And so how did you make the transition out of being homeless and having an active drug addiction?
Actually, is a funny story. Is I turned 20. I'm old now. I'm 49 now, but I got a job bartending at a police officer's bar down in Jersey. And I guess I was drinking with the customers one shot for one shot. And I woke up the next morning with like $5,000 in my pocket. And I ended up taking all the money from the till and bringing it home with me. So he came and locked me up the next morning. My aunt bailed me out and he told me, son, he said, you can either start doing 90 meetings in 90 days or you can go to jail. So I started doing 90 meetings in 90 days and I've been clean ever since. So I've got like 30 or 31 years clean and sober now.
That's amazing. And to be able to maintain that after going through the TBI and the ocular stroke and to not fall back into that path, that must have been very difficult.
Well, yeah, because now it's like, when I went to the VA, I'm like, listen, I'm in the program. I can't have anything with narcotics. So anything we do, we have to, try to do something that's non-narcotic based. Because a lot of times the VA, they'll give you medicines that, are narcotic based because the average person isn't in the program.
Right.
But the doctor that I'm working with through the VA, my primary at the VA, she's awesome. So she's like, all right, we're going to find things that you can take that are non-addictive and are non-narcotic. And they've worked so well, and now I'm down to just taking one pill before I go to bed at night. And that's the only medication that they have me on. And I think it's more for seizures than anything else. So it's actually helping out. I mean, like I said, I'm only taking one pill a day and it's not a narcotic. So I'm grateful for that the VA actually worked around it and tried, didn't say, well, there's nothing we can do for you. You got to suck it up. I wouldn't want to go back to day one,
So you describe it as having now a vision for the future. And what is that vision for the future?
It's funny. Because I had I had two uncles, and one was a Christian man, and his name was Uncle Tino, and everybody loves him. He was like everybody's buddy, he was everybody's friend. When people needed to bend somebody's ear, he was the man. So when he passed away from cancer in his early 50s, the church was packed. I mean, you couldn't get in there, and everybody was, talking and crying about how much he's changed their lives. And then I had another uncle. He died at like 75, and he was just an average guy, but when he died, like nobody showed up to his grave. I mean, for the funeral, except for like the family. And when that happened, I was like, you know what? When I die, I want there to be like 3 or 4 services. I want people to show up just to make sure that I'm dead. Uh-huh. I want to be able to impact that many people in the world. I want to be able to help that many people in the world. And that's when I started having, that vision of, okay, there's a lot of people out there that are dealing with stuff that, not only stroke, but addiction. And you're listening to a lot of negative stuff. Maybe I could be that beacon of light to where, you don't have to be in this doom and gloom world. That there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and it doesn't have to be a train. So that's my vision. Like tomorrow morning, I actually have a meeting with the vice president of Madison Square Garden to see what I can do to help victims of depression, anybody that's going through any kind of depression, addiction, anything like that, to see what the garden can actually do if we can hold events there. So I'm pretty excited about that tomorrow.
And that is such a great place to be able to potentially do that stuff, and with the just the power and challenges that New York City itself presents.
Yeah, that's why a lot of people, when I'm thinking I'm having a bad day, because where I live, like a half a block away, I can actually see the new World Trade Center right from a half a block from my house.
Uh-huh.
So when I go there and I think, all right, those people went to work that day and didn't come back home. So I've got a pretty good life, and now if I can just help as many people get back to the way that they were living and even better, because like you said, it's all about the mindset. If you're around people that are positive, that's going to rub off on you. So I'm sure that you've seen that with a lot of people that have had the strokes. If people are hanging out with positive people, they seem to recover better, faster.
And that's in stroke recovery, and that's not just in stroke recovery. That's in other aspects of life, too, for folks who haven't even been through this. But the environment you allow yourself to be in has a tremendous impact on how you behave and how you talk about yourself. And if everybody that around you is talking negatively about you and about the experience you're in, then yeah, that's going to feed on itself. The brain is constantly rewiring itself through the neuroplasticity that enables us to recover. And it's building those patterns based on the data that it gets and the data that we let it receive. And that's all it can do.
Well, they say that you are the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most.
Right.
So if you're hanging out with dirtbags, you eventually, like I tell the people that I sponsor in the program, if you hang out in a barbershop long enough, you're going to get a haircut. So it's kind of like you want to, even if you don't, like I was on a podcast yesterday with a gentleman from Canada, and we were talking. He's like, even if you don't have mentors that are there physically, you can actually start listening to podcasts. And when you're with them, your mind doesn't know the difference whether they're there physically or mentally. So you can actually start, having that mentor relationship, even though they're not there in the physical form. So you can start learning and start, upping your game by the people that you hang out and listen to and read.
And that applies in the positive way of finding the right podcast to listen to and the right people to listen to. And it also can work the other way if you're just watching junk on TV. Yeah,
it's like don't even watch the news because they don't want it. There's no positiveness on the news. Like my wife, she's like, "Did you hear what happened?" I'm like, "Nope." If it didn't happen on my podcast or it didn't happen on the NFL Network, I don't know if it even happened. Right. And the funny thing is, like, even with my stroke, I make a lot of levity of it. Like my wife says, you didn't clean that the right way. I'm like, honey, it's my eye. And she's like, come on, that's bullshit. but it's kind of like you have fun with it. You can't keep, if you think of it as a negative, it's like, it'll just bring you down. I think of it as a positive because like somebody I was talking to says, most of the time if somebody has like an ocular stroke is that their other senses are become heightened. Like your sense of hearing, your sense of smell. I'm like, yeah, I just wish my guitar playing sounded a little bit better. Because I'm the world's okayest guitar player. So now when you had your stroke, what was your recovery like?
Well, my stroke was just over a year ago.
Okay, so it's new.
It's still fairly new. Mine was, I just woke up one morning, 7 a.m., and my arm felt a little funny. I figured I slept on it wrong. Over the next 15 minutes, it lost more and more functionality, and then I lost the use of my leg. Got to the hospital and spent the next month there. Learning how to walk again, learning how to take care of myself with only one usable arm, and going through that while my brain is trying to rebuild itself. And I had some fantastic care at the hospital, and my girlfriend was great, and she was wonderfully supportive. I think especially in that first month, it was a lot more traumatic for her than it was for me.
Yeah.
Because, I sort of shifted into a mindset of sort of a very short-term approach, not as a, oh no, my life is falling apart. It's like, oh, okay, so what do I do now in the next few minutes? What do I do today? What do I do to get this basic stuff happening again?
And she had a fear of the unknown.
Yeah, exactly. Or she had to look at outside life, how
the
is
real world.
Yeah, how are the bills going to get paid? How is rent going to actually happen? And all of that stuff. My perspective was, and I managed to get all that taken care of and automated. Online bill pay that you can schedule months in advance was a lifesaver.
Yeah.
I got very sort of task focused on what I was doing and sort of lost myself in the recovery process. So today I walk with a cane and a leg brace. I can get some distance, but I'm about 1/3 to 1/2 of my previous walking speed.
Okay.
And I don't really have any.
So there's no marathons in your future.
No, well, every day can be a marathon. But yeah, I don't know how to run yet. So
okay.
I'm going to have to relearn that. I've been able to do it in the pool, but...
the operative word is yet.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the things I talk about a lot is the power of yet. I can't use my arm yet. I can't run yet.
Now, when you... do you still drink caffeine or stuff like that?
I do.
Oh.
I reduced my caffeine intake. My standard Starbucks order used to be a 5-shot Americano.
Oh, man.
And the doctor was like, yeah, no, you're going to have to stop that. This is Seattle, so I'm not going to take away your coffee altogether, but you need to reduce it. So I'm down to, I now do single shots if I go out to Starbucks now, and 1 or 2 cups a day instead of 1 or 2 pots a day. So, and I've gotten my blood pressure down quite a bit because my blood pressure was controlled at the time of my stroke, but I had about 2 years of high blood pressure that was resolved 6 months before the stroke. But in that time, just those couple of years, it did its damage. And that ultimately led to that clot forming.
Yeah, that's like a lot of people that get sick from alcohol. It's after they get sober, because then they find out, okay, your body, your liver's been damaged from, just because you quit now doesn't mean, the damage is gone. So what would you suggest for a person like myself that has gone, been through it for 6 years, that just doesn't want to go back, have it happen again? What would you suggest?
What I tell people who don't want to have another stroke is stay on the meds that are prescribed, because if you've had a clot-based stroke, you're probably going to be on a blood thinner the rest of your life. And that daily aspirin they tell you to take, new studies show that only is effective if you weigh under 154 pounds.
I think my left leg is 154 pounds.
Yeah, exactly. But aside from that, it's just the basics that we're supposed to do for everything. It's keep your blood pressure under control, keep your cholesterol under control, don't get diabetes, quit smoking if you smoke, and especially if you are a snorer, go ahead and get evaluated for sleep apnea. Because sleep apnea is one of those hidden killers. That contributes to diabetes, it contributes to high blood pressure, it contributes to poor sleep quality, and contributes to stroke. And all those other things also contribute to stroke, so it can really get you. I had a sleep study done after my stroke because, I'm also overweight, and that's one of those things. I lost 20 pounds while I was in the hospital. Sleep apnea is when while you're sleeping you stop breathing because your throat closes. Sleep apnea is considered a condition when that happens 5 times an hour.
Okay.
It's considered severe when it happens 30 times an hour. In my case, it was happening 59 times an hour. So I was essentially stopping breathing and waking up every minute of the night.
So you were getting no sleep.
So, yeah, I was probably sleep deprived for 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, so you weren't getting any REM sleep or anything like that.
Yeah, not a lot of it. Not a lot of it. And that causes problems. And usually that's diagnosed by your partner who complains about your snoring.
Well, she usually chokes me or puts a pillow over my face. So maybe that might be it.
Yeah, if it's a lot of snoring, it's definitely something to get looked at. And the other thing is, if you find that you dream a lot and you often remember your dreams, that can also be indicative of it. Because everybody dreams at night, even folks who say they don't dream. But what happens is when your sleep is functioning properly, dreams happen in such a way that you don't retain any memory of them. If you are always remembering all of your dreams, it's because you're waking up while dreaming, even if you don't come fully conscious. And the most likely reason you're always waking up while dreaming is sleep apnea.
Oh, okay. Very interesting. See, I'm learning some stuff I don't even know, and I'm in the health field.
Yeah, and it's and so now I have I basically have a silicone tube that runs under my nose that I sleep with at night, and it blows air into my nose throughout the night to prevent my airway from closing. And I wake up in the morning, and I'm not groggy.
Yeah.
And it makes a huge difference. A friend of mine I just interviewed for the show, she had her apnea was kicking in at like 80 sometimes an hour. And
she was getting no sleep.
She was getting no sleep, and she really hadn't at any time in her life. Turns out she had been, she talked about how her parents always said she was such a great baby that was sleeping through the night after, just a couple of months. And what's likely happening is that, she was getting all of that sleep as a little kid because none of it was high quality sleep. So she was always tired.
Yeah.
And then that all compounds on it. The other thing that's really interesting about sleep, and there's all this research coming out now, and just what I have found is that if I sleep 8 hours in a day, the next day I weigh less. If I skip the sleep and sleep 3 hours in a night, and that's it, I'll probably have gained more weight. So what I'm consuming through the day is getting processed at night rather than stored. Sleep is actually work for the body. It's like when they close down the freeway overnight to do construction. It's not to just do nothing. It's to actually do tearing up and repairing and rebuilding things that you can't do during the day when there's traffic. That's what the brain is doing during sleep.
Yeah, and I know, a lot of people, they don't realize that, you hear a lot of these people going on these low carb, keto diets. But people don't realize that, your brain burns at least 100 to 150 calories a day. So if you don't have any carbs in your system, the wiring on your brain is going to be off, and a lot of people don't realize that, like you said, if you eat food before you go to bed, your body will actually either hold on to it. But most times if you don't eat before bed, you can, like you said, lose like 1 pound or 2 overnight because your body's active and your mind is active.
And especially after stroke or something like that, where the brain is kicking into high gear as it's trying to fix and figure out what's going on. So it's burning even more energy than ever before.
So, well, I learned something new today. So now when I go to work, I can tell somebody, because I figure in my life, if you're humble and you're teachable, life is so good. Because now I'm learning more and I can help more people with just the information that you've given me. Well, I appreciate you having me on this morning.
Absolutely. This has been fantastic. Richard shared a lot of great ideas and thoughts in this episode, and we didn't even get into the depths of the work he is doing for folks struggling with alcohol or opioid addiction. While we were actually having the conversation, I had no idea how quotable and tweetable he was until I started doing the editing. What does this episode make you think about? Let us know in the comments over at strokecast.com/Richard. Check out Richard's website and podcast through the show notes at strokecast.com/Richard, or just search #SupplementGuyNJ. If you listen to Strokecast through Apple Podcasts or something else on the Apple platform, please give us a rating and review to encourage other folks to check out the Strokecast as well. And of course, as always, don't get best, get better. Thanks a lot. I'm Bill Monroe, and I'll talk to you next week.
The Strokecast, Bill Monroe, and Bill's guests provide general information and entertainment, not medical advice. Please do not make any changes to your treatment plan or the execution of your treatment plan without first consulting your personal doctor or medical team. The Strokecast is a proud production of the Currently Speaking Podcast Network.